Hi, Movie here. Today I'm going to explain an action thriller movie called Mafia, the Game of Survival. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie opens in Moscow in 2072, where a popular game called Mafia has been developed into a hugely successful television show. The game begins with 11 participants, 9 civilians, and 2 Mafia members. The contestants must vote for those they suspect of being Mafia members, and after every round, the Mafia can choose a civilian they want to eliminate. The winning team will receive $1 billion, which they must share with the surviving contestants. Meanwhile, those who are eliminated will be subjected to their deepest fears in a simulation and face a horrific death. Joe Rogan shows up and tries to make you laugh until you literally die of boredom. And with this, the host announces the 57th season of the game and begins introducing the participants. The first one is an 85-year-old billionaire named Luca, who joined the game because he's tired of his boring life. He has 4 spoiled grandchildren who are circling like sharks and waiting for his death to claim his fortune. However, if Luca dies in the game, they won't receive a single penny, so his family is cheering for him to stay alive. Gonna buy V-Bucks, Grandpa? Gonna buy some skins with that money, Grandpa? Fuck you, kids. The next player is a 38-year-old man named Eli, who claims he has nothing to lose after being diagnosed with cancer, which will kill him in 3 months. He played the game to win money for his family, despite his wife's pleas to spend his last days with them. The host then introduces the 3rd and 4th contestants, who are actually prisoners straight from jail and have come to play to regain their freedom. The youngest is an 18-year-old boy, Ivan, who claims he was wrongfully accused, but the other prisoner, Butcher's, probably not innocent. He seems like a tough guy who is determined to take revenge on those who wronged him. After their introductions, the contestants begin speaking one by one, each swearing that they are innocent civilians and not Mafia. The host then gives them 10 minutes to cast their first votes, and as the countdown begins, the contestants, family, and friends nervously watch on their televisions. The players begin arguing, so a woman named Marie asks everyone to stop wasting their limited time by bickering. She votes for a man named Kieran, and another contestant, Peter, also supports her judgment. But Butcher interrupts and says he recognizes Marie from a TV show, revealing that she was once a famous ballerina. However, her career was ruined by an accident on one rainy night that left her unable to dance. As a result, her fame disappeared, and she couldn't afford a prosthetic leg due to their high cost, which is why she entered the game. Butcher suspects that Peter and Marie are a couple, but it turns out Peter is simply her #1 obsessive fan and came to the game solely because of her. Since these two obviously know each other, the contestants begin to suspect that they're the Mafia. Peter tries to convince them that this isn't true, but the contestants don't believe him and start voting for Marie. This frustrates the ballerina, and she blames Peter for stalking her and ruining everything. He tries to save her by asking them to vote for him instead, but the contestants ignore his words. In the end, Marie is collectively voted out, but the host announces that she's just a civilian, which shocks everyone. Moments later, her chair begins to approach a black sphere looming above them, which eventually consumes her. Marie soon appears in a simulation and finds herself in the woods on a stormy night. It turns out her greatest fear is rain and thunderstorms because of her accident. She runs through the forest in terror, and in a desperate attempt to escape, she plunges off a cliff. Unfortunately, she's struck by lightning while in midair and dies a painful death. Her body immediately turns to ashes, leaving all the contestants and the audience horrified, and some of them slightly aroused. Upon seeing this, the host is disappointed and says that just because 2 people know each other doesn't mean they're Mafia. Next, it is time for the 2 Mafia members to select a civilian to eliminate. Several drones fly over the players, and suddenly, everything goes dark. When the lights return, the host announces that the Mafia has chosen Butcher to be eliminated. This pleases Peter, who blames the man for Marie's death. But Butcher is enraged and begins cursing everyone. He is also consumed by the black sphere, and through a flashback of his evaluation, we see him claiming that he isn't scared of anything. He only says that he doesn't want to die like an idiot while being surrounded by idiots, which is why he'll die live on Instagram while surrounded by the kind of people who comment on things on Instagram. In the present, Butcher finds himself in a fighting pit with a roaring crowd watching and cheering. He is confronted by 2 men who launch a brutal attack on him. Fortunately, Butcher knows how to defend himself and fights back fiercely to eliminate his opponents. However, they continued to respawn to life and resume their assault. After several grueling rounds, Butcher finally defeats them permanently, and his fellow inmates in real life celebrate the victory. It seems like he might survive, but as he steps back, he suddenly trips over an iron bar, which pierces his head, leading to his idiotic death. In the second round, The players are ordered to vote again, but this time they only have 8 minutes to decide as the voting time decreases with each round. A man named Constantine speaks up, claiming he knows who the Mafia is. The host reveals Constantine's background. He has a unique brain mutation that allows him to see the future. What? Why? Okay. Because of this, he has worked as a consultant for large corporations and has even assisted the government during war. People have nicknamed him the Black Messenger because of his ability, and his greatest fear is dying of old age. Next, Constantine tells everyone that Peter is Mafia, and he chose Butcher to be killed to avenge Marie's death. Peter then asks why he allowed Marie to die if he knew the truth. Constantine reveals that it's because he didn't want to share the prize money with other civilians. Constantine now votes for Peter, and soon the other contestants follow his lead. Peter no longer cares either, as he doesn't want to live after Marie's death. In the end, he is eliminated, but the host shocks everyone by announcing that Peter is also a civilian. Soon, the chair begins to lift him toward the sphere, and shortly after, Peter wakes up in the middle of a vast ocean. This is definitely my fear. It turns out he is terrified of water, so he tries to row toward land, but the creator opens a hole and sends numerous sharks circling him. Yep, this sucks. Realizing he won't escape, he decides to fight them and manages to injure one shark with a broken paddle. However, the blood quickly attracts other sharks who move in. However, he suffers from PTSD after losing all his men on the battlefield and came here to find out if he deserves to live or not. He begins to scold Ivan because he despises people who disobey the law, but the boy explains that he's actually innocent. Upon seeing this, a woman named Laura intervenes and calls Walter a bully, but the old man continues to bother Ivan. It turns out that after Ivan graduated high school, he was celebrating with his friends one night when they got into a car accident. Luckily for him, Ivan was rescued by a mysterious woman, but his friends died. As a result, the deceased boy's parents blamed him for their deaths and took him to court. Witnesses claimed Ivan was driving, even though it wasn't true, and it turns out the boy's biggest fear is dying in prison. In the present, Ivan continues to insist that he is innocent, but Walter doesn't believe him and suspects that the young boy and Lara know each other and are Mafia. He tries to convince everyone to vote for them, but this behavior makes him look suspicious, and he ends up receiving the most votes. However, the host announces that Walter is also a civilian, and she's soon consumed by the sphere. It turns out that her biggest fear is heights, and she soon finds herself on a plane. The plane heads towards a storm where the clouds begin to develop tentacles as if they were alive. I have an inkling her fear isn't heights. Eventually, the winds push the plane into a hurricane and it is destroyed, causing Laura to lose her life. With Laura gone, only 6 players now remain, and not a single Mafia member has been exposed. In the next round, players are given 4 minutes to choose the next person, which creates tension between them. Kieran believes the Mafia is Ivan, arguing that he probably knew the truth about Laura framing him, which is why the Mafia chose her to be eliminated. However, a girl named Kate disagrees and votes for Constantine to be eliminated, since he falsely accused Peter of being Mafia earlier. To everyone's surprise, Constantine doesn't defend himself and tells Kate a prophecy in which she must go towards the triangular shape when she has nowhere else to escape. The voting soon begins, and the contestants divide their votes, but everyone is stunned when they see Constantine voting for himself. It turns out that in the history of this game, no one has ever voted for themselves until now. After he's eliminated, the host announces that Constantine is, in fact, Mafia, which stuns everyone and brings them relief. Soon he is taken to the Black Sphere like the other victims. Constantine soon finds himself on a staircase where he bumps into a man who calls him Grandpa, which offends him. He then looks into a mirror and is horrified to see himself aging rapidly. The man continues to weaken with every passing moment until he finally collapses to the ground. However, before dying, Constantine suddenly begins laughing and exclaiming how he successfully changed the course of his game. It turns out that his fear isn't dying of old age. In fact, it is his greatest desire. He's still dead though, and he didn't get to experience old age. However, the host doesn't care about his words and resumes the game, in which the Mafia must now choose someone to be eliminated. Everything goes dark again, and when the lights come back on, the host announces that the chosen one is Ivan. Kate feels very bad for the young boy, who had a whole life ahead of him, but Ivan doesn't mind and is relieved that he managed to prove his innocence to the audience and to his mother before his death. The host then announces that Ivan is actually a civilian, and soon he is led to the Black Sphere. The boy soon finds himself in prison, where some guards take him to execution, but Ivan imagines himself on a beach, where he sees his mother, who's giving him the courage to face his death. The guards at the jail eventually shoot him, while everyone in the audience is saddened by his loss. With this, only 4 players now remain in the game: Kate, Kieran, Luca, and Eli. The host gives them 2 minutes to vote, and tensions rise as everyone begins arguing and accusing each other of being Mafia. Kate and Kieran seem to protect one another, which leads Eli to suspect they might be romantically involved. Through a flashback, we learn that Kate and Kieran had met in a bar one night before the game. It turns out they really hit it off, and Kate shared her secrets with him, including how she grew up in an orphanage without parents. Whoa, keep that sexy talk for later. The two had a good time, but they had no idea they would meet again in the game. In the present, Kieran declares that they're not conspiring, but Eli and Luca don't believe him. Meanwhile, Kate has had enough of everything, so she refuses to vote and doesn't want to be responsible for someone else's death. Eventually, their voting time runs out, and since they didn't make any decisions, the game is forced to choose a random person to be eliminated. Ironically, it ends up being Kate, but it turns out she is also just a civilian. Her fears are revealed, which turn out to be heights, snakes, and deserts. Her chair then lifts to go into the black sphere, and seeing this, a panicked Kieran gets out of his chair to help her. Don't take her to the great sandy cock in the sky! As a result, the sphere consumes both of them, and the host is stunned because such an event has never occurred before. Both Kate and Kieran soon arrive in a place with only a glass surface beneath them. Kieran assures her not to be afraid, but soon the floor begins to crack. The two quickly run away, but they are soon forced to jump and fall into an abyss. Surprisingly, the two are still alive, but they're lost somewhere in a vast desert. They begin looking for a way out, when suddenly Kate notices a triangle of light on a cliff and recalls Constantine talking about this. The two assume it must be the exit and rush towards it, but all of a sudden, Kate's other fear, a huge snake, appears and begins chasing them. They somehow manage to escape the snake, but things take a worse turn when they notice a giant monster made of lava crawling toward them. Kate's fears are stupid. The duo realizes they are not only confronting Kate's fear, but Kieran's as well. She asks him what his greatest fear is, and he admits that it is losing her. He then urges her to hide while he faces the monster, but he is severely injured in the process. During the fight, Kieran notices that when the monster steps in front of the light triangle, its body begins to burn. He soon realizes that the creature is sensitive to the light, and also spots a triangle hanging around its neck. Kieran then snatches the pendant and uses its light on the monster, which eventually causes the creature to be burned to ash. Kate and Kieran then see a stone with faces carved into it, and one of its eyes has a triangle missing. They place the pendant there, after which the place starts shaking, and soon they find themselves at an establishment. Moments later, they notice a woman handing her baby to some staff in the room. Kate finally realizes that this is the orphanage she grew up in, and admits that one of her greatest fears is knowing why her mother abandoned her. That's too many fears, Kate. Pick one! She begins to get emotional, but Kieran assures her that whatever she is seeing isn't real, and that she must be brave. Then all of a sudden, their surroundings begin to disintegrate, and they finally find themselves in front of the game's host. He announces that the game is over since only a Mafia member and a civilian are left alive. In this case, the Mafia automatically wins. But before announcing the winner, there's an ad break on the show. Fucking Eggo waffles. Get 'em with the chocolate chips. Only $25.99 a box. The host then shockingly reveals that he allowed Kieran to escape from his chair so they could survive. Because the audience had grown tired of the brutal deaths, they showed a love story instead. Constantine was actually one of his employees who attempted to sabotage the game but failed. The host now lets the two leave, but warns them sternly not to attempt to destroy the game. After some time, Eli returns home with $1 billion, revealing that he was the second Mafia. He then lives for another 10 months before passing away, while the remaining civilian, Luca, receives no prize money. He disinherits his family and donates his fortune to Kate's former orphanage. Ivan's mother, on the other hand, receives flowers every day in memory of her son, implying that the whole nation is mourning his loss. In the final scene, Kate and Kieran visit Constantine's grave and are grateful for what he did for them. The movie concludes with Kieran signing up for the next season of the game, determined to bring down the Mafia and finally put an end to the deadly competition.